everyone, I'm Erin from Red Buffalo Coffee and Tea in Silverthorne, and these are your virtual home coffee brewing classes. Join me over the next couple of videos as we talk about the quintessential elements to brewing coffee better at home. Welcome back to your virtual home cafe. Today we are going to be going over pour-overs. Fun thing about pour-overs is that they come in so many different shapes and sizes, but you kind of want to make sure you're getting the right filter method to your fun size. So I've arranged here a selection of some of the types of pour-overs you might see. This is a Chemex. This is a really popular form of brewing, and these are both Hario V60s. This is a smaller size. This takes a size 1 filter, and this is a larger size, and this takes a size 2 filter. These are beehive filters. So you can see in here, it's got a flat bottom. You can see I love this one. It's come camping with me a lot because I can drop it and it's fine. But it's got a flat bottom there, whereas your V60s have a rounded, pointed bottom. I brought out a couple different mediums of filters. These are paper filters. I also have a mesh filter. The mesh filter is with a beehive flat bottom again, and not the pointed bottom. They also make cloth filters as well, so that's something to be aware of. There's kind of different varieties that people like because they say that it influences its taste. They say perhaps that the paper filters take out more of the impurities, and so you get a cleaner, crisper cup, but some people say that you get kind of a paper taste in there. So to avoid the paper taste, a lot of the times I'll go ahead and open it up, put it in its pour over, and I will rinse it and dump the water out, and it kind of gets rid of some of that paper taste a little bit. The Chemex filter is a double ply filter, so it's much thicker. You would open it up and you'd put it like this in your Chemex. Now if you don't rinse this, you will absolutely get a pretty papery taste in there, so make sure you rinse your filters before you use your paper filters. In a Chemex, you can use a mesh filter like this, but know that there's going to be some debates about taste differences because of the flat bottom versus a pointed bottom. So just kind of be aware of the differences in your filters and what they're going to do. I'm going to go off on a brief tangent here while I have all of these out on display, because there's new science coming out, because coffee nerds get really nerdy, and that the material that your pour over is made with will influence your taste. So coffee is sensitive. Coffee is 98% water, and water temperature is going to influence that. So the argument goes that ceramic and glass have a high thermodynamics, meaning that they're going to take longer to heat up. And so they're going to take more energy away when you add your hot water in here to heating the glass or the ceramic than from from your coffee, so that it might cool your coffee is the argument. Versus if you have a plastic or a stainless steel infuser body, that these have less thermodynamics, and so they're going to not take as much heat, and so that your coffee when it's brewing will be hotter. I would love for you to play with that. Write down those notes and let me know what you think. But next we're going to get moving on to our ratios for pour overs. So again, go back to the beginner classes, look at the water to coffee ratios, because once you know your basic recipes, you can then bounce around and change a little bit from there. When I use a pour over, I generally like to go with a 15:1 ratio. And then what that means is 15 parts water, 1 part coffee. So if I'm using a single cup, which most pour overs brew just 1 cup at a time. In a Chemex, you can get 2, but you're gonna wanna make some modifications to your recipe so you can adjust for time. We'll get to that in a minute. But if I'm using a single cup, a 12-ounce cup, convert this back into milliliters because we wanna work with the metric system, has 360 milliliters of water. Divide that by 15, I'm gonna get 24 grams of coffee. So again, 15:1, 360 milliliters to 24 grams of coffee. If you don't have a scale at home, although I recommend you do get one, just keep in mind, this is your 12-ounce cup. Most ceramic cups at home are gonna be a 12-ounce cup. And if you don't have a scale, fill that first with water and then boil that amount so you don't accidentally overflow your cup later on. This is a very common mistake. I've done it many mornings when I've been like, I don't need my scale. And then for 24 grams, remember 7 grams per tablespoon roughly Remember, volume doesn't equal mass, so light roast and dark roast have a different volume than they do mass. So this is going to take about 3 big tablespoons of coffee into my grinder. Speaking of grinders, the grind that we want to use for this is going to be like a sugar, not a confection of sugar, but just a regular sugar. It's in between your espresso and your drip coffee. So keep that in mind though, because remember I did say that the Chemex would be a little different if you were brewing for more than 1 cup. Overall, we want our brew time to hover around 3 minutes. If I still use that finer grind size and I'm doubling my amount of coffee used, I'm using 50 grams of coffee, it's going to actually take longer to brew that much time. And unfortunately, what I will do is oversteep, because at 50 grams of coffee ground at the same that I'm using for a single cup, it might take me 6 minutes. Now we are ready to brew our pour over. I've chosen the Ario 2 with the number 2 filter. You've seen that I've rinsed my filter and let it drain out because I don't want that papery taste influencing my coffee. And I have my 12-ounce cup here as well. I'm going to go on a brief tangent here about water temperature, because remember, we want the ceramic, it might cool my coffee. I'm already dealing with colder water at altitude because atmospheric pressure keeps water as a liquid. And when you're at higher altitude and you have less atmospheric pressure, water doesn't want to stay as a liquid as much, and it becomes a vapor the closer and the higher temperature you get. So at our elevation in Silverthorne at 9,000 feet, our water boils at 190 degrees. After that, it becomes vapor. At sea level, your water boils at 212 degrees. So you're dealing with a lot hotter water, which always surprises me when I'm traveling somewhere and order Americano, take my first sip, and annihilate my mouth. So I have my rinsed out filter here. I have my water. I like using a gooseneck kettle because it does allow for more control. You don't need it, but I highly recommend it, and it looks pretty too. So I just ground my 24 grams of coffee. Remember, going back to our grind video, that grinding immediately before use is very, very important. I do try to shake it a little, make it a little level surface to play with. And now I'm going to add my water, just about 100 milliliters to start, because then I want it to bloom. Because that bloom, remember those gases we were talking about in our grind video? Those are going to give them a chance to really express their flavor, so to speak. So I want all my grounds to get wet. So I don't want to just pour into the middle. So this is why I kind of do a corkscrew motion. All right, and then as this blooms, you'll see it start to grow, those bubbles, the gases escaping. This is our Ethiopian coffee that we carry at Red Buffalo. I really enjoy this one for its berry notes that it has. And when you do a pour over, you get to smell this so much. I love using floral coffees on pour over, or more delicate lemony coffees, because that paper again takes out a lot of those rougher notes that you might see in coffees. So again, make sure you're getting all your grounds evenly wet. You don't want to leave anything dry, because then you're just going to have an under extracted part of coffee. So I like to use a little corkscrew motion. Interestingly, if you talk to a lot of baristas, they're all going to have a different idea on their pour method. So find what's right for you. Again, anytime you start with a recipe, great. And then once you get to know it, you can break the rules. But start with the rules first. And then once I get to my 260 milliliters or 260 grams of weight plus my 24 grams of coffee weight, I'm gonna let this brew. Again, your total brew time should be about 3 minutes. My grind size was again for about a sugar for the table, and that should take me about 3 minutes to brew through. If it tastes a little sour, maybe you need to use perhaps a bit more coffee, or your grind needs to be a little finer. If it tastes really over extracted, your grind was too fine and you might want to make it a little coarser. So now we're going to let this brew through here, and we'll check back in. This is one of those you can now go walk away, so long as you didn't over pour it, and go, make your eggs, go brush your teeth. Well, don't brush your teeth yet. You can brush your teeth after. All right, we'll come back in just a moment. Now our coffee is done brewing. A good measure of if you've done a good pour over is that my coffee grounds are still stuck to the side of the paper here. If you've been pouring coffee too much down the side of the filter while you were pouring your coffee in, or you let it go too far down and then you topped it off, your coffee's gonna be like running down the sides, and you're just gonna see a lot of like messy paper and then a big pile at the bottom. So you really do want to have that coffee kind of stuck to the sides of the paper filter there. But after that, your coffee is now ready to enjoy. Thank you so much for tuning in to your virtual home cafe class. We look forward to teaching you so much more about how to make the best coffee at home.